himself admits was not involved in the attack. But first of all, let's get to the news and the big question. The President of the United States has agreed to testify, or rather not testify, to meet with the 9/11 commissioners along with the Vice President. Why do you believe he's insisted on meeting only there with the Vice President?
Well, that's a good question. I think the Vice President can probably help him remember some of the answers, and they can refer each other to help them through. You know, it's always easier when you've got someone who worked with you on these issues sitting next to you who can help you answer the questions.
Do you think it could be so they coordinate their memories?
Well, it certainly makes it harder for the Commission to find a difference between the two stories if the two of them are telling their stories simultaneously and they hear each other's stories.
You're smiling.
Well, when I
you think they might have different stories?
When I testified for 6 hours before the joint inquiry of the Congress, and I testified for 15 hours in closed session with the Commission, I was the only one in the room. I didn't have a lawyer, I didn't have my deputy, I didn't have my notes from the White House, and, well, I guess when you're president, you get special treatment.
But why do you think that special treatment includes that the president's direction and dictation, that no notes, no transcript be taken, and that he not take the oath and the Vice President not take the oath? You had to take the oath. You had a transcript taken that could be going over point by point. Oh, yeah. Why do you believe the president has insisted on a different playing field?
Well, I think the president's lawyer, Al Gonzalez, is being very picky about the prerogatives of the office. And, you know, frankly, under the circumstances, this is a special commission. It's not the Congress. He's not appearing before a committee of the Congress, which is what Gonzalez keeps saying. This is not a committee of the Congress. This is a special commission. There hasn't been one like it since the Warren Commission. And so it's really not precedential. But they're arguing that it is precedential, and therefore they don't want any eroding of the prerogatives of the president.
In fact, they've made it that explicit. They don't want this to be said as a precedent. Let me ask you about your role. Do you believe your testimony, and before that your book, has played a role in moving the White House to release Condoleezza Rice to testify openly?
I don't know. You know, it's very difficult to observe yourself and to know what your own role or your own effect is. I think the families have been very strong, the families of the victims, in demanding this commission, in demanding that the commission be extended, in demanding that Dr. Rice testify. I think they're a very powerful force.
Your book makes a very strong accusation that the president really wasn't fully prepared. He hadn't fully prepared his government to deal with the threat of terrorism before 9/11. Is that right?
Well, the president himself says this.
He did it with Bob Woodward.
Yeah, and, you know, his chairman of the Joint Chiefs says it. His chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Hugh Shelton, says in an interview that was published 2 years ago that when Clinton left and Bush came into office, that terrorism was pushed to the back burner. So I'm not the only one who observed this. Lots of people observed it.
Well, what will Condoleezza Rice's testimony do to that impression, that argument that the president was not fully preparing the country?
I don't know what Dr. Rice will testify to, but she has said in the past that the president met every morning, 5 days a week, with the Director of Central Intelligence, and that she, the National Security Advisor, was in the room, and that they discussed terrorism from time to time. And once, in May, the president said he wanted to have a strategy to deal with al-Qaeda. So she'll be able to say, if she repeats what she said before, that the president did learn about al-Qaeda in the intelligence briefings, and he once asked for a strategy.
Will she be telling the truth?
Of course.
You believe in her willingness to tell the whole truth?
Absolutely. Dr. Rice is a very honorable woman who has served her country very admirably, and I don't see any reason to impugn her veracity.
In the press, this has been set up as an argument between you and her. You say the president was not fully preparing the country. She said he was doing a very serious job of preparing the country. You believe that will be her testimony, right?
Yeah, but the notion that this is a he said, she said is what a lot of media want to play on, frankly. A lot of cable TV and a lot of media want to say, hype this story up and say this is, you know, Condi against Dick. It's not, and I don't want it to be.
And you don't believe in your book that you pointed the finger at Condoleezza Rice as part of the reason the president wasn't prepared?
Look, the president has to have the ultimate responsibility. The president was the guy who was getting those intelligence briefings every morning from George Tenet. And week after week, month after month, hearing about al-Qaeda. And once in May said, I want to have a strategy. Later, he tells, in December of 2001, he tells Bob Woodward, yeah, you know, I knew there was a strategy in development somewhere, but I didn't know where. So in May, he asks for the strategy to deal with al-Qaeda after this Chinese water torture every day of intelligence reports about al-Qaeda. It finally works, and he asks for the strategy. And yet, in September, he hasn't asked for it again. He doesn't know where it is. By his own admission, he doesn't know at what stage it is in development. You know, I think the president has to have the responsibility.
Is this going to end up being one of those, you say the glass was half empty, then she says the glass was half full, and this becomes a moot point in 2 weeks after front page pictures on her in the major news magazines, her, this very, very attractive woman, very likable woman, almost, if she weren't so smart, Miss Congeniality. You can't win that argument, can you? If it becomes half full, half empty, because she can always say, hey, look, I was at meetings that Richard wasn't at. I was at so many times I was with the president, he was not there. I can tell you what he can't tell you. I can win the argument.
I don't think it's about winning the argument.
It isn't?
We have a presidential commission that is doing fact-finding.
Right.
And it's going to issue a report in July. And hopefully it will look at the facts rather than winning an argument. And it will state conclusions. So let's wait and see what that says.
Why would, if she's going to tell the truth, and you have confidence that she will cite actual events and actual conversations, and you've done the same in your book, and you would take the oath for your book, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely.
You swear to the truth of your book right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've sworn under all the 21 hours or whatever it is.
Well, how can two truths be complementary if one truth says the president didn't prepare the country, and the other testimony said he did? How can they both be true?
Because it's a matter of opinion. It's a matter of opinion rather than fact. If I say the President's Principals Committee, the Secretary of State,
right,
the Director of Central Intelligence, the Director of... They met about 100 times before 9/11. 99 of them were not about terrorism. I would therefore say this record of 1 out of 100 meetings at Condi Rice's level indicates it's not a priority. She may say, well, it was a priority because we thought it was.
Let's get to some of the really details here. 67% of the American people, according to the latest Gallup poll, as of yesterday, said they believe that 9/11 could not have been stopped, could not have been prevented. Are you one of those 67%?
I don't know. I don't know if it could have been. I think it's very easy and in some ways all too facile to say either yes or no.
Okay.
I think we need to look at what the facts are. And what the facts are, as we now know them, are that CIA knew at a low level and FBI knew at a low level that 2 of the 19 hijackers were in the United States.
Right.
Now, CIA knew it for over a year. FBI learned it a month before the attack. If that information had bubbled up, if the system had worked in FBI, if the system had worked in CIA, I think we probably could have. I would like to think I would have gone on battle stations, put the names and pictures out.
You're too humble here about what the United States knew. We also knew that people from the Arab countries, some of these Arab countries, which are troubling in their politics, were getting flight lessons here out of nowhere, all over the place, especially in Phoenix. Later on, we found it was Florida. Right. We know that this fellow, Zachariah Moussaoui, tried to get flight training in very advanced commercial jet piloting, even though he'd never flown apparently a Piper Cub. We knew what else? What else did we? We knew that we had to prepare for something like the Atlanta Olympics, for planes being used as missiles. All of these pieces, did anyone have them all?
It turns out the FBI had all sorts of information about people in the United States taking flight lessons. Sometimes that information didn't leave the field office. Sometimes it did leave the field office and go to headquarters, but it stayed at low levels. Now, there's another set of commission hearings coming up where the former director of the FBI and the current director of the FBI, the former Attorney General and the current Attorney General will have to testify. And I think, frankly, they've got a lot of explaining to do about why this FBI, which was given billions of dollars, you know, the Clinton administration increased the counterterrorism budget of the FBI by 350%, why it couldn't have an information retrieval system.
Right. Well, if you were conducting the 9/11 commissions instead of being a witness before it, would you be looking at the role of Louis Freeh?
Absolutely. And the commission is.
The commission, the FBI director. But here, I want to get back to that same question. There's so much of this information, it's like particles. And the question is, did they ever come together? The flight training, Moussaoui, the al-Qaeda people in the country, the prospect of an attack of planes used as missiles. Did you have all that information? Did you?
We had none,
personally?
We had none of the following information. We in the White House didn't know about the FBI reports on the flight training.
Okay.
We in the White House didn't know about the CIA or FBI knowing that 2 of the hijackers were in the country. And despite the fact that we held daily meetings with the FBI and CIA throughout that summer and said to them, look, something is about to happen. Lower the threshold for what you tell us. Tell us anything.
Right.
You know. And let's all do that around the table, every agency, every department, and we'll do fusion, intelligence fusion. We'll bring all of this information together, as we did during the Millennium period, December 1999, and we'll see what we can find out. Tell us everything, anything.
Well, let's talk about something very critical. You said in your book that as I briefed Condoleezza Rice on al-Qaeda, this is in January of 2001, almost a year before 9/11, her facial expression gave me the impression that she had never heard the term before. Subsequent to that, your book coming out, NBC's Lisa Myers has gone back and found a radio interview where Rice gave the year before, and here's what she said on the radio. This was the year before that conversation. Let's listen.
We don't want to wake up one day and find out that Osama bin Laden has been successful on our own territory.
That's a contradiction. You said she wasn't familiar with al-Qaeda, and here she is the year before talking about bin Laden's operation maybe hitting us here in America.
Chris, did you hear what she said?
Yeah.
She talked about bin Laden.
Right.
And what I said in the passage you're referring to in the book is when I said al-Qaeda, she looked confused. When I said bin Laden, she recognized who I was talking about.
So but you made a narrower point. You're making a narrower point now than it seemed to imply in the book. In the book, you're implying she wasn't familiar with the whole operation. She wasn't familiar with the term al-Qaeda, which means the base in Arabic.
People can look at what I said in the book. What I said in the book was she understood that there was a guy, bin Laden.
Right.
I don't think she or any of the Bush people coming in, until we briefed them, realized that there was this larger thing than just one.
She thought it was just a gang, not a network.
Exactly. Exactly right.
And you think you made that clearly in the book. You didn't imply that she was out to lunch with regard to the whole al-Qaeda operation.
Well, look,
just the name.
Anybody in the United States who was interested in national security had heard of bin Laden.
Right.
What I was saying was she didn't recognize, A, that there was this network called al-Qaeda, and B, that it was enormous.
You know how I read it when I read it the first time, and I bet I'm like a lot of readers, and I think in fairness you got to recognize this. We read it like she was out to lunch. She doesn't even know about al-Qaeda. And she's the National Security Advisor. You're saying now that you simply meant to say she was unaware that this group was much broader in its tentacles than she appreciated.
And that the Vice President, the Secretary of State, all of them, when they get briefed for the first time, as I describe in that section of the book, when we briefed them, my team briefed them for the first time about the extent of this network, 50, 60 countries, cells, affiliate groups, millions of dollars moving around, they were shocked.
Was Condi Rice on top of the terrorist threat?
Was she on top of the terrorist threat?
Big question.
We told her everything we knew. Every time we had any information, we shared it with her. I urged her at the beginning of the administration, within the first 2 days, I urged her to hold a meeting.
That's all input. What about output? Was she aware, was she cognizant of this threat that you were?
She was fully cognizant of it because not only was I telling her about it, but she was also sitting in with the president every morning.
But she didn't make the president cognizant, and it didn't lend to him a sense of urgency.
The president himself said he didn't have a sense of urgency. And how that's possible after George Tenet briefs you every day. Now, George Tenet selects carefully what intelligence he shows.
So you're now saying it's not Condi, it's not Tenet, it's the bottleneck here in terms of being prepared mentally for what we faced 9/11 was the president himself.
I think
his brain was unable to absorb. Well, what are you saying?
I'm not going to use terms like the president's brain.
Well, his consciousness, his awareness, his cognition.
No, I don't want to make it loaded. Let's just talk about the facts. The facts are the president was repeatedly briefed.
To what effect?
By his director of Central.
To what effect was he briefed?
And as far as I know, the only thing that he ever did was to ask in May for a strategy, which he never got.
So you're arguing basically all the briefings, all the preps were largely inconsequential because all it led to it was a curiosity at one point for one day.
There may be more evidence, but I'm unaware of it.
Tough charge. We'll be right back. Let's talk about what it was like to be in the White House on the morning of 9/11. We're coming back for a TikTok, a moment-by-moment description of what it was like for the